But packed in a mass, the Trojans came on pounding, Hector leading the way with long, leaping strides, and heading the van in person came the god Apollo, shoulders wrapped in cloud, gripping the storm shield, the tempest's terror, dazzling, tassels flaring along its front. The bronzesmith god of fire gave it to Zeus to bear and strike fear in men, and Apollo gripped it now, locked in his two fists as he led the Trojans on. But packed in a mass the Argives stood their ground, deafening cries of battle breaking from both sides, as whipping arrows leapt away from bowstrings. Showers of spears raining from daring, hardy arms went deep into soldiers' bodies, quick to fight, but showers of others cut short halfway before they could graze glistening skin, stuck in the ground, still lusting to sink in flesh. Long as Apollo held the storm shield firm in his grasp, the weapons hurtled side to side and men kept falling. But once he looked the fast Achaean driver square in the eyes, shook the shield, and loosed an enormous battle cry himself. Apollo stunned the high courage in all their chests. They lost their grip, forgot their fighting fury. Routed like herds of cattle or big flocks of sheep, when two wild beasts stampede them away in terror, suddenly pouncing down in their midst. Pitch darkness, the shepherd off and gone. So the defenseless Argives panicked, routed. Apollo hurled fear in their hearts and handed Hector and all his Trojans instant glory. There man killed man in the mad scatter of battle. Hector finished Stichius, finished Arcesilaus off, the one a chief of Boeotians armed in bronze, the other brave Menelaus' trusty comrade. Aeneas slaughtered Medon and Iasus outright, Medon the bastard son of royal King Oileus, little Ajax's brother, but Medon killed Phylace, banished from native land. He'd killed a kinsman dear to Oileus' wife, his stepmother Areopagus. But Iasus became a captain of Athens' troops, Sphelus's son he was called, and Bucalus' grandson. Polydamas killed Mecisteus, Polites cut down Echius, first in the onset. Dashing Agenor cut down Clonius, and Paris lanced Deacus, deep below the shoulder, ran him through from behind as he fled the front, and the bronze spear came jutting out his chest. While the Trojans tore the war gear off the bodies, Argives clambered back in a tangled mass, scrambling back through the sharp stakes and deep pit of the trench, fleeing left and right, forced inside the rampart. So Hector commanded his Trojans, sounding out, "Now storm the ships, drop those bloody spoils. Any straggler I catch, hanging back from the fleet, right here on the spot I'll put that man to death. No kin, no women commit his corpse to the flames. The dogs will tear his flesh before our walls." With a full shoulder stroke he flogged his horses on, loosing a splitting war cry down the Trojan ranks, and all cried back in answer, a savage roar rising, driving teams and chariots close in line with his. And Apollo far in the lead, the god's feet kicking the banks of the deep trench down with a god's ease, tumbled earth in the pit between, bridging it with a dike immense and wide and long as a hurtling spear will fly when a man makes practice cast to test his strength. Holding formation now, the Trojans rolled across it, Apollo heading them, gripping the awesome storm shield, and he tore that Argive rampart down with the same ease some boy at the seashore knocks sand-castles down. He no sooner built his playthings up, child's play, and he wrecks them all with hands and kicking feet, just for the sport of it. God of the wild cry, Apollo, so you wrecked the Achaeans' work and drove the men who had built it up with all that grief and labor into headlong panic rout. Achaeans stampeding back till they reined in hard, huddling tight by the sterns and shouting out to each other, flung their arms to all the immortals, each man crying out a prayer. But none as rapt as Nestor, Achaea's watch and ward, who stretched his hands to the starry skies and prayed, Father Zeus, if ever in Argos's golden wheatlands one of us burned the fat thighs of sheep or bulls, and begged a safe return, and you promised with a nod, remember it now, Olympian, save us from this ruthless day, don't let these Trojans mow us down in droves. So he pleaded, and hearing the old man's prayers, Zeus, who rules the world, let loose a great crack of thunder, rending the skies. But Trojans, thrilled at the sound of Zeus's thunder, pitched themselves at the Argives still more fiercely, summoning up their fiery lust for battle. Like a giant breaker rearing up on the rangy seas, crashing over a ship's sides, driven in by the winds and the blast builds the comber's crushing impact, a hoarse roar. Trojans stormed over the rampart, lashing their teams to fight against the ships, hurling their two-edged spears at close range there. Trojans from lurching cars, but Achaeans from high decks, scrambling aloft black hulls, lunged down with the long pikes, jointed and clinched and tipped with ripping bronze, they'd kept on board for bloody fights at sea.